Okay. Our discussion last time was like indigenous versus the colonial, or all the
Yep.
stuff that is skewing this world in certain direction. And one of the message, I don't know if I shared with you, but the way I worked with the companies to transform is often top down, but the bottom up, but not so much bottom up, and communication is not well done. So I look at the whole picture to find the bottleneck and open up so that the whole organization start to become more dynamic, one solid instead of the top down. And it's like a indigenous versus the the capitalistic colonization kind of. So that I said maybe that applies to my construct of the brain and the heart, and the heart with all the experience and the ideas, the image that the cat and this and that, remember it, and there's things to do in the brain this way and that way, and you guide. So this has some way of judging, but if we don't connect to the base, again, the bottom, the ground floor level, I think that's the word I use.
Well, it's EQ, isn't it? It's it's empathy, which is what your heart gives you, versus IQ, which is intelligent decisions, or decisions, whether they're intelligent or not.
Yeah, usually they call it the emotionally intelligent, but you call it the empathy engine. But that's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's the heart.
Yeah.
Of course, that makes sense. The brain versus the heart. That's the.
And some people favor one more than the other.
Right. Yeah.
In their decision making.
So that's what I was going through in my mind after our conversation. So where that I want to do the brainstorm is along the line of that thought and the structure and what I've been doing versus what you've been doing, which is kind of similar in a different environment, right?
Yeah.
So I thought there must be something to connect to each other for me to find, just like you have explained to me about Instagram is doing this and that. And I don't know much about it, and I was thinking, well, but I don't want to do it. But what's the situation? How the dynamics of the whole? This is a world organization transformation is happening, right?
Yeah.
With the world up here and the Trump going this one and that way. Let's throw this in. Let's throw that out. Top down, and here the money is speaking, and they vote this way and that way. They pick up this. So you know that situation. So the concern is like I had the concern with the organization to have a disconnect here and there and misunderstanding and the bottleneck developed and all that. So that's crazy to think like that, but that's my habit of doing 40 years with the organization. And then within myself, I worked out the brain versus heart discussion, and that's the book of the results from the heart, the listening to, and using the brain not to be used by the brain. So there's an analogy of that. So me and the organization, now the world is moving around with this big scheme of things. So the point of brainstorming is, number one, is to communicate on that basis, so that if we can communicate, that's important, because we cannot go much further. But let's stop here. So up to what I explained, how do you respond to that? Your feeling or your approach, your difference or similar?
Yeah, I think the difference.
Am I thinking too much kind of weird?
No, not at all. I think that we have got a massive disconnect, and I think we are between two worlds at the moment. This world that is the Trumps and the David Seymours and these people who
they think they know what they want to do, and that's very important.
They're driven by money, and they're driven by that whole philosophy of wealth and growth.
Yeah,
and
because they have the leverage, they can do whatever they want to do. Right.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it's that way of teaching that has taught people that those things are really important. That makes it really difficult for you to get people to think a different way, and for people to think with their heart and to make decisions based on what the impact is to the environment, what the impact to the people around them is when they make their decisions.
Right.
We're doing this in the farming sector at the moment with this project that I'm working on, where the farming sector at the moment is one of the greatest polluters in New Zealand. They're doing an inordinate amount of damage to our environment.
Yeah.
Money
speaks.
So there are better ways to do that, but they are ruled and governed by banks, by Big Fert, by the likes of Fonterra's, these big companies who have a plan, who have shareholders that are driven by money.
Before you go further, there's a regulation of drawing the boundary, right? So how does it fit to that
Well,
scheme?
the regulation, there's not enough regulation,
Right.
but you're talking about money and you're talking about lobby. If you have money, you have
Twisting.
infinite lobby. So you have the power to
Right.
make sure that the government doesn't make changes
Right.
to benefit the environment. The reality is that there are ways to change that, and what I've learnt over the years of being bitter and disappointed with with decisions and what the way our environment's being treated is you can't. You've got to cherry pick the small wins that you can go for. So rather than looking at that great big picture, which you can't do anything about, it's too much. It just make you angry and upset.
Right.
What is the little thing that you can do that's right next to you that you can do and achieve and complete that makes a difference?
In this case, you meaning yourself, or you're talking about the different?
I'm talking about everything. If you focus on that, the big question I have to a lot of people is, are you happy?
Right.
Are you actually happy with yourself?
How do you feel? Right.
How do you feel about where you're at with your business, with your family, with the things you own, with the places you go to? Are you happy?
Right.
And the majority of people are not.
And the empathy, intelligence you're talking about. How do you monitor, and how are you aware of it? What's the meter saying?
And it's that wonderful mental health program where if you say to someone, hey, you okay?
Yeah.
The automatic response from a New Zealand bloke is, yeah, mate, I'm good.
Right.
But if you lean into that conversation and go, yeah, but are you really
sure,
okay, mate? Are you sure about that? And then often there'll be a pause and they'll say, yeah, you know what? And then you
to think about it.
Yeah.
Listen to your heart.
Yeah, because they don't want to think about those things.
Protecting them to be feeling bad.
Yeah,
You cannot do anything.
and if you can open them up, then you can find what the problem is, and then you can help them solve that problem and go forward. And I think a lot of the problems that we have at the moment, it's like with the farmers, the biggest thing is fear, which is typical in politics as well. Fear of risk, fear of insecurity. So they want to toe the company line. They want to do it how they're being told they should do it by the lobbyists and by the big
You're talking about
organizations. This is the same not just for farming, this is for everyone. So
you're talking about the company being Fonterra, or those big guys?
Or the fertilizer
matter
companies is a good example. So we're one of the biggest users of synthetic nitrogen fertilizer in the world. It's the major pollutant in our river systems.
To do what?
It runs off the farms.
Like a Didimo kind of thing, or
no? It's just because it's nitrogen. What it does is it activates plant growth dramatically.
Right.
When it gets into our waterways, all the algae grows really fast.
Right.
All of that algae is toxic. What that does is the
take
dying
that-
algae then pollutes, and that along with things like E. coli from the waste of the animals is poisoning our rivers. 60% of our rivers in New Zealand aren't swimmable at the moment.
Yeah.
That's horrific. for New Zealand.
Unswimmable by the human?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep. Yeah. So if you go onto the LAWA site, which is the Land Atmosphere Water Research Organisation, which is a government organisation in New Zealand, they'll have a list of all the rivers in New Zealand and the state of those rivers.
Yeah.
And 60% currently, they recommend that humans don't swim in them.
So there's no regulatory yardstick to say if you hit this number, you have to do something or some such thing.
There is. But for instance, nitrate levels in the groundwater in Canterbury rose above the levels that government had set. So the government changed them to higher, because it was easier to change a number in legislation than it was to try and fix the problem.
And also the people, the money speak behind kind of
So
thing.
the reality is you can create change, and things like whether it's farming, whether it's in your own life. People,
when did it happen?
over the last 20 years, it's been getting worse and worse and worse. Yeah.
And there's a newspaper or the articles also written against that?
We've just finished a film called Te Tato Wai, which is about the state of New Zealand's water, and about that 60% being unswimmable. And what we've done is, rather than focus on the negatives, what we've been doing is looking at the stories of positive change that's being done in communities. So what can we as a community do to protect our water here?
Right.
Because we can't rely on central government, we can't rely on local government. As a community, and this is coming back to the heart
Right.
and getting people to think as a collective
Yeah.
rather than that narcissist view
Right.
that it's all about me and I'm just going to do what I need to do. Once you get a community to mobilise,
So let me
you get
understand it.
change.
So I'm just to have a reference. Say in Brazil, right, the forest. It's their version of the same thing. In that you can see it and feel it, and I don't know if
Yeah.
you have done any episode on that one.
Yeah.
But it's the same. You think?
It's the same. It's the same with our fisheries. You know, I remember as a child fishing here with my father, and the difference in this fishery now compared with what it was like 40 years ago is unbelievable in terms of how degraded it is. And we see this as a pristine environment, and it's not.
Let me ask you this way, not to argue, but just for the purpose of check and balance. If let's assume this is the right argument or not, just for the sake of discussion. If the data says that we are living longer and less disease, that the happiness level has to be monitored. But if you only look at the hard data of how you live long and all that, let's say if that indicates living longer, but we may not know the context of it, and living longer with the sadness, that's not.
No, it's not.
That's
good.
not
No,
good.
No.
But do you see it that way, or do you have the? I don't know how I can explain this, because number can fool us, and depending on how you put the weight.
Yep.
And the numbers speak, and you can manipulate all that stuff. So that requires the education and looking at the picture from different angle. And one of the most difficult thing in any of the company that I work with is that they don't seem to synthesize ideas. There are ideas here and there. There's no way of meshing together to say this means what kind of thing. So
And that's a big part of a community. The best people to judge the state of your own health, or the land's health, are the people who are living there, or are your family, or for someone to be on the outside and look in, they can use all the science in the world, but they don't have the information that we have. So a community here, for our council to tell us that we need to do this, when they don't live here or don't come here, is wrong. And that's what the whole idea behind, I suppose, the old version of democracy was.
So let me stop it there. Yeah, let's go slowly so that I'm with you. In my case, I'm outsider coming to the company. Usually they read the book and stuff like that, and this is the guy who speaks the top management language, and this is something can be done. It's good for the people and also for the result, right? And then that's one part of the equation that I have worked with the companies. Once I'm in, I talk to the top management. They have nice presentation. That's right. They can always, protect and agree and what is. But you go. That's why the shop floor, the ground level, I check, and then what they have, and they may not speak, but you like your story too, just to communicate and then loosen up, and then things start to happen. So what am I saying?
Well, the greatest gift of anybody in top management, like in my area, and I've been successful in what I do. I'm not the best by any means. In fact, I don't think I'm great at any one facet of what happens in my industry. But what I've been really good at doing is creating really good teams. Yeah. And if you surround yourself,
but there's also the angle that you're looking at too, right? Not just the team, but what is the character and the approach is strategically be able to communicate with that.
You can have the best people in every category that you require in your industry and have a failed business.
That's right.
Because if you cannot get people to get along and work together,
that's right.
And then if you can get that group that is working really well together and you give them a sense of ownership, whether they have ownership or not, it doesn't matter. But as if they feel that they belong to what that is and the results that they're creating, you get 120% out of that organisation. Right. And for me, working in my industry, I surround myself with really, really good people, but not the best. And the reason why I don't choose the best is because the best often have big egos, and they're very difficult to work together, and then you get it disjointed.
Right.
Everything's got to be smooth, and people who consider themselves family, who work together really well, those are the sort of teams you want to build. And if you build a good team,
how many are the number of people you work with?
It depends. I mean, at one stage,
10 people. Or...
Yeah, at one stage my company was up to about 50 people.
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore, and we choose our teams depending on where we're going and what those external stresses.
So this one, Vanuatu or whatever, it's 40 people. Is that the team? Oh, that's a fairly big team.
Yeah. I don't have any control over that team, so that's my fear. Is that it's an American team coming in that I have to try and get into position and get the job done.
You are the one to facilitate to get things done, given the setting.
Yeah, and I don't like doing that because if I'm going to do that and get a result, I want to control the people who I bring in and the people, because then you know you can deliver. When you don't know, it only takes one bad egg in that group of 40 that can destroy the relationship.
So that we know what we're talking about. In my case, I'm always by myself.
Yeah.
I talk to anyone and I become friend with anyone almost, and then I just digest and figure out bottleneck, the walls, and show the way to everyone here, and then convince, shall we do this? I'm not the one to do it because you are the one who knows everything and I'm just the outsider. This is the idea. If you agree, just do it. And then I come back in 3 months or 2 months or whatever, and then keep these things going so that I can see the evolutionary process. So you are more of a one-shot deal of the film to get things done, to get the message out.
Yeah, we work on a contract basis, so it's project by project for us. We don't have a company structure where people are there for 25 years.
Right.
So our projects are based on, because our environment is different every job we do. So if I go, I've got another project down at Stewart Island with white sharks. It's a white shark team that works there. People I know are good on boats. People I know who are good. Somebody goes over the side of the boat, they're dead.
So tell me that example again, and the number of people and what's the mission of the project and how you're going to work on it, how you're working on it.
Well, we've got two separate projects that are working pretty much at the same time. I've got one in Malaysia, and I've got a conference call with Malaysia Tourism later today. And that's a travel log travelling through Malaysia, doing stories about mainly conservation projects that they've got going on right through Malaysia. Mm-hmm. For that, I need a team that is comfortable in Asian countries, comfortable in a Muslim country. Yeah. I need people who don't need to understand the language, but they need to have the ability to understand a different culture. So how you dress, how you act around people, and
how to communicate.
And how to communicate. When I go and do the shark documentary down at Stewart Island, I have a team of people who don't need to interact with anybody.
In this case.
But they need to know the animals. They need to understand the safety issues that we face. They need to be quick thinkers. They need to be reasonably physically fit.
What's the theme on that one?
It's just a film on great white sharks for Discovery Channel. Of
the ecology, of the environment and how they are living, awareness program kind of thing. And the other one in Malaysia is the snapshot of what's going on to indicate.
It's a travel log, a travel show, basically.
Right.
So and it's aimed at increasing tourism in Malaysia, but also creating a back catalogue of content that they can use for marketing.
Who is funding that?
That'll be funded by the Malaysian Tourism Office.
Right. So going back to the money related issue, but related to what we discussed last time, which is the structural issue that we have. And if I look at that as the main theme of discussion, so shark team may not fit into that. Maybe it has an element of it. Yeah. And the tourism in Malaysia may not fit into it as much, right? So back to this main issue, and also you're talking about how you can do it and promote. I mean, could you give me one example?
Yeah, so the difference in different teams. I think,
but let's focus on the environment issue and the Afghanistan, all the people issue because of the tribalism and all that? Not the other one? What's the percentage of this category to the other one in your work?
It's dramatically changed over the years,
Right.
Keo. So it used to be that 99% of my work was natural history.
Right.
So documentaries on wildlife
Right.
and the environment. Over the 30 years I've been in documentary, 40 years behind the camera, my motivation has changed.
Right.
And you'll see that reflected in that book in the later chapters.
Oh.
So what I've seen over that time is because basically I consider myself in natural history like a voyeur.
Mm-hmm.
I sit on the outside and I watch.
Yeah.
And then I try and take those images and that story
Right.
and convert that into something that people can
Right.
watch and
Right.
understand, because the majority of people will
They
never
don't
get an
know,
opportunity
right.
to see what we see.
Right, right. So awareness program. kind
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah, and that's what it is, and that's why those documentaries have always worked, because people
Right.
want to see,
Yeah.
but they can't afford to go to these places or
Right,
do
right,
these
right,
things.
right.
Over the years, the changes in our environment that we've seen, because we're there day in, day out, are extreme.
Right.
We talk about a thing called baseline. We talk about how much we understand or remember of our lives. The older we are, the more history we have in
Right.
terms of what we understand as change.
Yeah.
For these ones, she doesn't remember.
Right.
She doesn't have that.
Right.
So
No reference.
her idea, there's no reference. So
Yeah.
her idea of how things are is now, and
Right.
maybe the last 3
Right.
or 4 years that
That's
she can
right.
remember.
Yeah, for old guys like us, we
Yeah.
need to do something.
Yeah, but I know that I have all that. So my
You're not
knowledge
old.
and
Yeah.
information of that change is much greater.
Right.
Their information of the change is going to start from now and go on for another
Right.
40,
That's
60 years.
But they need to be somewhat educated and be aware of what's happening. And
Yeah,
could
and
be
that
happening.
was our job, was to try and bring that information to people.
So that
As-
becomes a more higher percentage of
Yeah,
your,
so
is that what you're saying?
seeing the damage and things that were happening, my focus has gone from natural history to environment.
Related to the human behavioral issue.
Yeah, and a percentage going to charity. So I spend a lot of time. We're working on a project with Child Fund at the moment.
So let me understand some specific example of those, this new category of the videos. What are the major ones that
So
you can...
in the last couple of years, there's been a series of films that we've made. The last one was The Price of Fish, which was looking at the state of our fishery in New Zealand.
Yeah.
I went on from there to, you remember the pink mau mau?
Yeah.
So
Last year or
so I managed to get the legislation changed.
because of that?
Because of that, I saw what was happening. I went straight to government and sat with the minister and talked about how.
So this is not the
legislation
film;
needed to change.
it's more of an activist kind of.
Yeah, more activist side of it. But there's two sides to it, because
Right.
I also wield a lot of power, because,
Right.
and I made a huge song and dance about what was happening, and all the media was screening it, and I pushed the minister into a position where he needed to make a statement. But
You become the influencer of the.
yeah. So I influenced that decision. But I also, like I said, you can't pick those big things. There's little battles that you can win, and this was a battle that we could win reasonably easy. It would be nice to do lots of other changes, but there was one piece of legislation that could easily be changed that wasn't going to take years in government to stop what was
Right.
happening.
Right.
And so we gave that to the minister as a solution. So we didn't just go and say, this is all
Which
bad.
one are you talking about?
This is the pink mau mau.
Oh, this one. Yeah. Okay. Right.
So there was a really simple thing in the legislation that said
Right.
that you're only allowed as a
So
fisherman.
in that case, you collected the knowledge, intelligence of the ones who can contribute, and you kind of coordinated and
Yeah.
put the output throw into the.
Yeah, and then put pressure on government to make
Right.
the change. And so that was a really successful little campaign, because we
Right.
got the law changed there.
Yeah.
This one that we're working on at the moment on fisheries, on our water, our freshwater systems. So we can complain and grizzle about the problems that we have with our water, or we can go, who's got some really good solutions, and then we can amplify their stories in order that there's more support for them, that they can
Yeah.
get the funding so that they can make the change. And then what happens is, when these organisations start having a profile, then the government pricks up their ears and goes, because politics is all about being
Attention.
seen to be doing the right thing. So as soon as they get a profile in the media and they seem to be doing the right thing and the community is rallying behind them, then the government will jump on board as well.
Right.
So it's often easier to just make these little wheels of change by starting at the bottom, on that ground floor, as you said.
So in my case, I did the same in an organization, in a company. I can relate to that because you have to have a story and the initiative and the potential impact and the bottom line and all that. So I can kind of connecting the unconnected channel to be together and spark goes up. But we can do it. And I did big companies too, the major companies in Europe too. I spent 6 years. And one of the case was the top management. I had a seminar. And before that, I went to one of the place, the factory, and something happened and brought this lady who is the, how do you call it, not the full-time employee, but part-time, but the supervisor, and make her presentation with all the biggies about, I call the mini company, to how to manage and the annual report writing and what's the mission and the objectives and plans and what happened, what is done, so that all the management start to realize, this is possible inside. So that became the major beginning of the change of the whole company. And after 6 years, I've done enough of it, but I want to go to the another level, which is like a sales and marketing organization, not related to operations. So there I hit the wall and I talked to CEO and close to CEO, but it get into the political scheme and then I kind of quit. I'm not going to interested in doing anything I can do, but it's not interesting to keep doing the same thing. So to go to the next. So anyway, I can see that. So I'm interested that you are kind of, that's what I felt that you may be doing. So that's one example, right? Are there anything more to say about this discussion?
There's with the work we're working on now. What we stumbled onto during this process is we had this company here that was doing this amazing remedial work by creating farms of algae that suck the toxic nutrients out of the water. And it's the same algae that we use for sushi, for the seaweed. So there's a product that they can create of it. They put it back into the environment for the farmers. So there's one idea. And then there was another a company that we're working with over here, which is a crowd called Punyu River Care. And we hear all these wonderful campaigns by organisations selling planting trees.
Yeah.
Now, these guys have been doing it for 8-9 years.
Yeah.
They've planted 3.5 million trees. And along the Awa, the river, the Punyu, you can actually see the difference it's made. Then we had this other project, Ririku to Ririkatai, which was another group of amazing scientists and experts coming together to try and figure out how we change the face of farming so that they lower synthetics, which is why I was on that organic farm. And what I saw at that, watching those guys, and this is like I say, I'm often a voyeur, I'm on the outside looking in, I'm filming it all, I'm taking in their stories. What I saw was their style of farming and multi-species, if applied to the riparian area of farms, could have a huge impact on the quality of our water. So the next stage for me now is knowing that I've stumbled onto something that can have a major impact without cost to the farmers, without cost to the government. How do I then amplify that message and get that change happening? So we created this film, this 1 hour, which I funded.
Yeah.
With a little bit of support from these organisations.
What kind of film is it? Documentary?
It's a 1 hour documentary. Yeah. And it basically comes to this conclusion. Here's all these things going on, but here's the solution.
Yeah.
Here is the solution that's going to fix things in 3 to 6 months. It's going to make a huge difference to our water. I've got that film finished. At the moment, it's out in the first 12 film festivals. It's been shortlisted for the first one. Once I get some awards around the world for this film, it gains power. Mm-hmm. Then it screens here in New Zealand in mainstream media, and the farmers and the politicians watch it,
right.
And then suddenly there's pressure to make that change.
Right.
So it's kind of like twisting it's twisting environmentalism. I'm using my media skills to bring about change. Yeah. Because there's no point in talking about it. Like I said, we can dwell on the negative. We can complain about how little fish there is.
Right.
We can grizzle about the quality of our water, that it's no good. Or we can physically do something. And that's when we talk about communities mobilising, why it's so important to get away from this Western way of thinking and back to an Indigenous community way of thinking, where we, as a group, as a collective here, sit down and go, what could we do to make this community better for our children and our grandchildren? Stop thinking about today and start thinking about tomorrow. And if everybody put 5 minutes into something in the community, the difference we could make would be huge. But you've got to get people around to that way of thinking. You've got to get rid of this narcissist way that humanity has gone down, where it's all about what's good for me, and the neighbours here.
It's so narrow-minded. Is what it is.
Neighbours here, great example. So they decided they wanted to put a fence up.
Oh, that's one on the right? Yeah, I noticed that.
So they rip out this beautiful wall of trees that gave us privacy, gave them privacy, protected the neighbour's house. Got halfway through it. They had all of their materials on the neighbour's site. They did nothing onto their property. They did all the work from this property. And that attitude, that just the arrogance of it, is extraordinary. I would have, if I owned this house and I decided I want to put a fence up, I'm going to go and talk to the neighbour and say, hey, look, I really would like to put a fence up. What do you think we should do? And you have that conversation. It's like this wonderful park here. If we all, as neighbours, got together, this whole hillside here is not used. You know what? That'd be an amazing fruit garden. We could turn that into a food forest that all the people in this community could then draw from.
Okay. Well, I think I got the general idea much more than before. Let me stop a little bit so that if I'm missing something. So I was comparing to my approach that I did with the company, but you're doing the big scheme of things with a specific project and the success storytelling or imagination to provide, and your background of assembling things, doing things, has a way of making things happen. So your future, let's ask this question then. What, 30, 40 years this and more of this direction. What's the future direction that you see?
I think the sad part about all of the work that I'd love to be doing is there's finding the finance and the ability to be able to produce and continue producing this sort of thing. What I have to do is I spend 3 months of my year working my ass off for big American broadcasters, doing all sorts of things so that I can spend the other 9 months of the year spending all that money on doing stuff for the community and for the environment.
Aren't you kind of like a developing business plan as you go on to kind of sell the idea and the stories and to bring in the cash from there to...
Not even that, Keo. There's two separate things
you're having
my
two
business.
separate baskets.
I have a commercial basket, which is the jobs I do to make money.
Right.
And I don't need all of that money.
Yeah.
So I make enough money from that 3 months, and then I pour that into the charity and into the environmental stuff.
Right.
The more of that I can do, the more of that I can do.
How about let me talk about my thing. Well, I'm not like your age. I'm older and not much time left. And this is the way I was structuring about my mission in life, and I'm communicating with YouTube and so forth. So I'm kind of bullshitter philosophy guy, all that nonsense, but with some track record of this and that, right? So having a mission which helps myself and help others, and have the process of coming up with the wisdom by listening to the heart, which is connected to, well, anyway, let's do, and then having fun. All of those 4 or 5 things simultaneously, so that you're all aligning everything you do. It's always connected, and that's maybe idealistic for my own sake, and I'm just speaking out loud. That's what I'm doing, kind of thing. Or it doesn't matter if anybody would listen. So I may be an altruistic bullshitter.
Yeah.
But I have somehow managed the, having the book written and doing this at a big company. So there's some philosophical background of what I shared can be applied, which is I said already in the company. There's a mini company and connecting the understanding and the glass wall so that the silo is broken down and the brick wall is gone and they communicate and the heart will bring it. So bullshit keeps on going, and then the bullshit applied for my case was the enlightenment and awakening that happens. And in my state of being, what I have done for myself, it's the same as in the case of the organization, but applied in my case. So that's good enough for me. Maybe there are more things that I can, but this is more than enough to kind of communicate. What is this, awakening or whatever, and what is the way, and how do you connect? And just using me as an experiment to see if I can communicate as much as I'm to convince myself. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So am I just doing lots of bullshit, or what's your opinion?
Communication is a really important thing, and being able to talk and expand.
Right, but maybe in my case, not many people are listening. But to me, it doesn't matter because I have to be convincing myself.
Yeah, but it's also a personal journey.
Right,
so,
exactly.
For me, you get, when you're working in environmental, every 30 seconds you hit a wall.
Right.
There's so much.
So
many barriers to achieving anything to do with saving our planet.
It's like a portfolio management. Do some of this.
You get a knockback, you get a knockback, you get a knockback, and you get a win.
Yeah.
And that win is the thing that sustains you long term. Because then you're going to get knocked back and knocked back and knocked back and knocked back again. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's maybe good enough because I want to talk too much because I don't want to conclude anything because if I conclude, maybe I'll be sad because I want to leave the room open to have the silence to speak, and then anything else that you can add on to what we talked.
No, I think people do need to. I don't think you need to come 100% from your heart, but I think people need to split it 50-50.
Yeah.
You have to have empathy, and you have to have an appreciation of those around you. We can't carry on down this path where it's me, myself, and I. It takes you to a road of unhappiness. Well, narcissists are never happy people. So,
beside yourself, what reference do you see it happening along the line of what you just talked about?
I know a lot of people who have done very well, who are very wealthy, who are incredibly unhappy.
Right, yeah, that is fairly understandable. Because what's the meaning of life is the question.
And they come back to me and they say, oh, you're doing such amazing things and you're going here and you're doing that. So you can do the same thing. You choose not to. You choose to buy another flash house and a flasher car and get a bigger mortgage and keep yourself in that same track.
So the reference is the wrong difference you're talking about. But you're more familiar with those references, but not the other kind of reference?
People just need to slow down and realize that
I totally believe it. That's why silence speak kind of thing, that the heart has to be listened, because if you're talking, then you cannot listen to it kind of thing.
No, and you have to, everyone needs to internally ask that question. So am I truly happy? So if I'm not, what do I need to do to achieve that?
I just wonder, the triggering point. Oh, you have the same hat like mine. Is that from the surf shop in Australia?
That's your hat.
What?
That's your hat. You left it behind.
Oh, is that right?
I'm going to put it up there. Yeah. You left it behind when you came last time.
All right. Well, maybe that's enough for the laugh. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm back in 10 days.
Okay.
So
I'll cook up something more. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.